So this past legislative session, we made great strides in the area of criminal justice reform, from voter rights restoration to former offenders, to looking at folks who have been wrongfully convicted, allowing for a process to extend the statute of limitations for when they are eligible to present new non-DNA evidence, remove the 2-year statute of limitations, in addition to, under the leadership of Chairman Yeager of the Judiciary Committee, looking at compensation for those who have been wronged by the justice system. We have gone through great lengths to ensure that we have your voice at the table, that we bring the policy that you see that is fit to help folks reintegrate back into our communities. And we want to make sure that we continue this dialogue with Congressman O'Rourke, and we are looking forward to a robust discussion on how we can continue to make progress and how we can continue to lift up the voices who feel as though they are now disenfranchised, whether that be talking to specifically housing and how rough it is to get housing once formerly incarcerated individuals are released, or we're talking about getting gainful employment. We have a responsibility as a state and as a nation to ensure that those who have been formerly incarcerated can reintegrate successfully back into our society. And if indeed we do get it wrong as a state, because as a state we have had 14 exonerations in our state with a total of 175 years lost. And in our nation, we've had 2,400 exonerations with a total of about 18,000 years of life lost. But we did something as a state about that. We said, we don't often get it wrong in our state, but when we do, we have to own it and we have to make it right. And we passed one of the strongest compensation pieces in the nation under the leadership of Chairman Yeager. So if you would like to elaborate more on it, Chairman, we'll just talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was AB 267. I work with the Innocence Project, which is a national group. I'm sure many of you know them well. But we were one of the few states left that did not provide any compensation for those who've been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, which seems to me to be a very obvious thing that we should be doing as a state. So I'm very thankful that we do have, I think, the strongest law in the country. You would be eligible for up to $100,000 per year of incarceration, depending on how long you serve. So that is going to be effective October 1, and as Chairman McCurdy said, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen or so who I think may actually petition come October 1. So I'm anxious to see that. I will say, just as a side note, that I was somewhat disappointed that there were still people in our state, particularly on the prosecutor side, who continued to oppose that legislation. To me, this is very common sense, and it was something that the state was going to pay for, not the local prosecutors. But that being said, for maybe the first time in a long time in the state legislature, the prosecutors did not have a veto power over some of the legislation that we were intending to enact, and that is thanks in large part to the efforts of Chairman McCurdy in the 2016 election, the 2018 election, and making sure that we elected Governor Steve Sisolak, because before it was hard to get things through the governor's office. But that was just one piece of legislation that we passed that I think is going to make a meaningful difference for what is admittedly a small number of people. But we know that we have others right now who are incarcerated and they're there wrongfully. We know that's the case. I wish sitting here I could tell you it was never going to happen again, but we know it's going to. So I'm very proud of that legislation, and many of you have heard of DeMarlo Berry. He was kind of the face of the legislation, and I believe he's going to be the first one probably to apply on October 1st, and that's going to be a great day when he is finally given some compensation for 20 plus years behind bars wrongfully.
22.
Yeah.
I've worked with him for 4 years at Southern Desert, where I taught him how to cut hair. So he's a very special guy.
Wow. Very special, and I'm still thinking about testimony that he gave in the hearings. I just don't know that I've ever met someone with that kind of grace. You have someone who was wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, and his point was, this isn't about me, this is about those who come after me. And somebody asked him, well, what would you do if you get all this money? What are you going to do? And he said, I'm just going to kind of do what I always do. I'm going to keep working, and I'd love to open a barber shop. And so, seeing that kind of grace in the face of tragedy, It's definitely something I saw, and I said I would love to aspire to be that graceful when I'm wronged in that way. And I know all of us would as well, so I just can't think of a better person who was behind that effort than DeMar Berry, and it's going to be a really fantastic day when he's finally given some justice for what happened to him.
That's great.
So, in addition to some of the legislation that we passed around, allowing for factual innocence and compensation when folks are wrongfully convicted, we also took a hard look at marijuana, and we looked at folks who have been previously convicted of the crime when it was a crime, and we have since decided as a state to decriminalize it. And we said that any time that there's any crime that is decriminalized, folks who have those records should have it sealed and essentially destroyed, and their rights automatically restored. I had an opportunity to work with Assemblywoman Neal on another piece of legislation, actually landmark legislation in this nation, that says that employers can't deny employment based on pre-screening of testing positive for marijuana. And so, Assemblywoman Neal.
So I didn't think it would be landmark, but as soon as it hit, it went national as the first state to ever get something through. It had some caveats in it because the state is still very conservative. I'm still conservative on the issue, and so we had caveats in it that basically, I think watered it down, but ultimately you can't discriminate against anyone for the lawful conduct, right, of using marijuana. And it's an interesting navigation because now I'm being faced with how do I get the Labor Commission and different entities on board to implement it based on the intent, and people not carving their own profession into it. Because, I've heard conversations that includes doctors, it includes like all these professions that I'm just like, why would you be pre-screening someone before they apply because it's a lawful conduct, and really trying to navigate the rebuttal, because the bill also allows, if you're tested upon hire, the employee gets to rebut the test. They have to do it on their own. But I was also brought up with the question, because I had no idea that Walgreens and Walmart have a drug screening test for marijuana. And so now I have to deal with the issue of making sure that it is a verified test that they rebut. And so it opened up a space that I think I wasn't clear that I would land in, but it's been a big thing for individuals who feel like their rights have been protected and they're somewhat empowered by the legislation, although it's imperfect.
That's great.
It's interesting.
I'll give her a
See
lot
that.
Even if it was unintentional, right?
Yeah.
I give her a lot of credit because pretty much when that bill was heard, the whole room was full.
Yeah.
And it was all full of people in opposition to the bill. The entire business community, the chambers of commerce. And I looked at it and I said, there's just no way. There's no way we're going to be able to get this thing through. And so it's a lot of credit to Assemblywoman Neal that in the face of what seemed to be insurmountable opposition, she continued to fight, as did Chairman McCurdy. And we're able to get that first in the nation bill passed. So congratulations on that, and thanks for your hard work.
Stress.
Do laryngitis too, if I remember.
Yeah, well, I had the flu. I literally testified and I had the flu. It was like 2 hours of opposition. It was just an interesting hearing. But we also attempted cash bail, which in and of itself, I think opened a lot of people's eyes to where we are in the state. And I think we're all clear that we're not ready, and that we have some conversations to be had on the prosecution, and especially with the courts. The courts were a huge roadblock in us moving that piece of legislation through. We had 3 bills, 1 made a hearing, then it got stalled, then my bill came back to life, then it was revamped and amended. It made it to the Senate, and that's where it found a new form of a bail study. But it was not without complications and a lot of drama between the public defender and the district attorney and the courts. Like, we couldn't find, we thought we found a middle ground, and then they were ultimately trying to wait till it got to the Senate so they could kill it. And so it was an effective effort to basically in the conversation, and it only dealt with misdemeanors, and that was the interesting part. The felony piece had been taken out. It was misdemeanors and gross mis. They had a problem with OR, and it was interesting because our state had been having that discussion around OR since the early 81. And so I had looked up the legislative history on how long we have been fighting, just simply understanding that there were disparate impacts around incarceration, and it had been over 30 years. But we still weren't at a place in 2019 where we could come to the table and actually say we were going to end cash bail, that we were debating what monetary meant. What did cash bail, how is that defined? And that literally were the questions that were being asked, and I was just like, it is already a term. But yet, those were some of the things, and you know, if you serve in Congress, that the nuances matter, and when people debate you over definitions, that's an effective way to try to kill the bill.
But everyone gets that you should not be too poor for justice in this country.
Right.
In fact, that's what's happening, and so much of what I want to do as president really is reflective of what you've been able to do here in Nevada and what you're fighting to do, as you just described, in ending cash bail. And so I want to begin by thanking you, Assemblywoman Neal, for your leadership on these issues and others that we haven't even touched on yet. Assemblyman Yeager, for your success on restorative justice and bringing everyone into the conversation. And then Chairman McCurdy, in addition to your role as an assemblyman, the fact that Nevada is going to help to choose the next president of the United States of America, and you're bringing everyone to the table to make sure that candidates are focused on the issues of greatest importance, issues that, and voters and people who haven't always been brought into the conversation before. So I think that's a testament to your leadership with everything that you've got on your plate right now. The fact that you were able to help organize this today is so meaningful to us, and I think so powerful for Nevada and the country, and I'm grateful. Pastor and First Lady Smith, thank you for being here. Leslie, thanks for having us and hosting us. I'll just briefly introduce myself, and then I'm going to listen, because that's what I came to do. My name's Beto O'Rourke. I come from a community that feels a lot like Las Vegas, literally as hot as Las Vegas is right now. We're in the desert southwest, in the Chihuahuan Desert. Beautiful mountains, not too far from my home, just like the beautiful mountains that we saw from the hotel room when we woke up here this morning. A city that is connected with Ciudad Juarez forms the largest binational community in the hemisphere. There are about 3 million of us on either side of the Rio Grande River speaking English and Spanish, community of immigrants and asylum seekers, folks from the world over who have chosen us, the United States, chosen El Paso, and made us stronger and better as a result. And that's certainly a message that I want to bring to the rest of the country. We don't need to just tolerate or respect one another. We should really embrace our diversity and our differences, foundational to our strength and our success and our security. Had a small business in El Paso, served on the city council, represented the community in Congress for 6 years, and then last year ran for the United States Senate and went to every one of the 254 counties of Texas. Didn't matter how rural or red or big or blue, we weren't going to take you for granted or write you off. We showed up for everybody, brought everyone into the conversation, as I'm gonna hope to do here today. And at the end of the day, won more votes than any Democrat had in the history of our state, won independents, won nearly 500,000 Republicans as well. And I think it shows that we can go past partisan differences of race, how many generations your family's been in this country, or whether you just got here yesterday, whether you've been justice involved or not. What matters more than anything else is that you're an American first, and we're going to treat one another with the respect and dignity that we're owed as Americans and as human beings. That's the premise of this campaign. Two things, and then I want to turn it over to you. One, when it comes to the challenges that we face, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Las Vegas is warming faster than any city in the United States of America right now, twice as fast as the average on the planet. El Paso, my hometown, is second just to Las Vegas in how quickly we're warming. So I think about climate change. We've got 10 years left to meet an existential threat. This city, down the road, if we don't get it right, will not support human life. It's very hard to see how it will. We've got a lot of things that we've got to do, but we've got to bring everyone in. And restoring voting rights, removing barriers to access to the polling place, a new Voting Rights Act, all fundamental to bringing everybody into the conversation and the solutions on climate. Same for healthcare, same for employment and a minimum wage that's a living wage, same for immigration, same for any issue that I can think about. This democracy, meaning all of us, has got to work. So strongly support and want to follow the lead that you've set on voting rights restoration and making sure that everyone's brought into the conversation and into the solutions. And that's fundamental to how I think we can bring about the change we need as a country. Second point that I want to make is this criminal justice system in our country, I am realizing belatedly as a white man especially, is part of a much larger system that I don't think I fully appreciated growing up, and really I'm just beginning to understand, just beginning to come into focus. Give you an example. I was twice arrested as a young man, once for attempted criminal trespass, once for driving under the influence. In each case, spent a night in jail, was able to post bail because I could afford to do so, and in no way did either of those charges, nor did either of those arrests define my future or limit my options or change the path that I was on to be able to start a small business or hold public office, or now running for president of the United States of America. I understand now how exceptional that experience is. And in a country that has 2.3 million behind bars today, right now, a population disproportionately comprised of people of color, too many there for marijuana possession, in a country where more than half the states have decided to either decriminalize or legalize or medicinalize marijuana. This is part of a system that has kept people in communities of color down by law for as long as we have been a country, certainly following Reconstruction after the Civil War in the United States of America. So in addition to following your lead in Nevada on ending the federal prohibition on marijuana, on fully expunging the arrest records for those arrested for possession of something that's legal in so much of the rest of the country, banning the box on employment application forms, you mentioned jobs, making sure that people can fully participate in the economy, ending the war on drugs. I think we also have to really squarely confront the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow and segregation and suppression. All of that is alive and well in this country today, and it is not just in our criminal justice system, although it's there for sure, but it's in our economy, it's in healthcare, it's in access to education. It is every part of America today. And I just wanted to say that at the outset to acknowledge the scope of the challenge and my desire to participate in a solution that includes everyone literally at the table in ensuring that we tell the full national story and together as a country come up with the full set of solutions to it. I know that what we're talking about today, voting rights and the criminal justice system, is an important part of it, but I just want to acknowledge that it extends systematically far beyond that. So, having said that, thanks again for being here, and I would love just to be able to listen, hear the solutions that you propose, answer any questions that you have for me, and just be guided by your experiences and your expertise on these or any other issues that you want to bring up. And again, Chairman, thanks for helping to organize this today. Really appreciate it. So, yeah, just feel free to jump in.
Okay.
Siobhan, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start off. First of all, I just want to thank the politicians right here in Nevada. I had a Category B felony, and with that felony, you got to wait 15 years with expungement. But they made a law or bill that passed to now it's only 5 years to where I could get that felony expunged. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Tell me what expungement means for you. What will you be able to do post-expungement that you're not able to do before it's expunged?
Well, you're once was a businessman or currently a businessman. I'm limited to certain businesses I can own. I believe you can't own like a alcohol beverage, like alcohol business, taverns, anything like that. I used to own a Medicaid business. I no longer could own that because I'm a felon. So, and then also with my education, I do have to send a criminal background to get into like any type of master's program. So, as I was saying, basically, the category B, they changed it to where you could get expunged in 5 years. And this gave me hope. This gave me like relief because like looking at my life 15 years being a felon, it was just like I felt hopeless. And then with that law being changed to 5 years for category B, which my crime is conspiracy of robbery. It's category B, it's right under category A, which is murder, anything in that category. So I'm placed in a category that's intense. So I just want to thank the people of Nevada for passing that. I'm grateful for that. As they were saying with the struggles, the roadblocks that we have with the court system and the judicial systems, like I try to get my case appealed with Clark County and then also the state of Nevada. I wasn't successful. So there is roadblocks with the court systems here, and it's a business, you know. So my main thing, what I would like to see out this whole criminal justice reform, especially with felons having the right to vote, is basically a naturalized re-entry program for felons to be expunged where, you know, you talk about money isn't the issue why, you know, the reason why you're getting expunged, you know. I shouldn't be able to clear my record just because I have a few $1,000s, you know. Right. And it should be a re-entry program where people could get rehab services, volunteer with public safety. That even means the police force or community organizations, to where people, if they don't want to be labeled as a felon and excluded out the community, I feel like it should be a natural process for them to re-entry without money being a factor of that process. So that's what I would like to see out of felons or people that's been just impacted by the criminal justice system.
I really like that idea that your ability to fulfill your potential shouldn't be conditioned on how much money you have and your ability to purchase that expungement or a re-entry that allows you to be employed or own a business. I like your idea also of being more civically or community engaged, that as a part of re-entry. You mentioned rehab services as well. It all sounds like a really smart investment on the part of the state or the part of the federal government. So appreciate those ideas. Yeah.
Thank you.
I definitely want to hop in briefly. During the election cycle last year, our Mass Liberation Project actually put forth an effort to get the voices heard from some people who were currently in custody but still had the opportunity to vote. We had a whole movement around that, was able to get some.
It was 61 ballots. We were able to literally like go to the jail, pick up and deliver to the elections department of people who were pre-trial, not convicted yet, but still in detention, still in jail. So they didn't have access to voting, but they were technically still eligible to vote. So we coordinated with CCDC and the Henderson Detention Center, and we just did absentee ballots. We pieced up our own money together. We bought ballots. We drove them over there. We picked them up and delivered them to the elections department. So I think you can jump back in, but what I'd like to see is like a more streamlined process because obviously folks are eligible to vote. They're just, they're pre-trial. They haven't been convicted yet.
Legally, you are innocent at that point. You have not been
Exactly.
convicted of a crime. You're being held on suspicion of.
Yeah. Or it could be that you just can't afford bail or whatever the case is, but you're behind bars, but you have not lost your legal right to vote. So it's just an access problem. So that's something that I think we're going to be trying to work on for 2020, but just across the board, across the nation, there should be a process in place where if you're pre-trial, you should have access to voting, period. Like, it's so simple.
Great point. Yeah, and love again that you all are taking a lead on this. Do you know if other states, other parts of the country are doing this?
Oh yeah, they've been, I think like ACLU has been leading on that, on inside voting for over 10 years. They have like a toolkit that we actually use that was put out in 2007. So So I know like Chicago, they had actual voting machines in Cook County inside of the county jail.
Wow.
So it's like, it's happening in other places. It's just a matter of us catching up out here, but if there could be some type of federal mandate saying that like this has to happen, then it would be a lot easier for us to do it on the ground locally.
I like that. I really do. It's a great idea.
Thank you. I brought that up to say, like, even with the reality of now, with the passing of AB 431 and over 70,000 people having their voting rights restored, we have to make that a commonplace. I know it's only been 30 days, but it's not common knowledge. There are people that are directly impacted that don't know that they have their voice back. So
How do they find out? What's the responsibility on the state's
So
side?
right now, our Attorney General, our former Senate Majority Leader, Aaron Ford, he has initiated a public information campaign from the Office of Attorney General to engage in notifying the public and specifically formerly incarcerated individuals about these new changes. In addition to the work that Assemblyman and Chairman of the Judiciary Steve Yeager and Dean Anil and myself, we're going to partner organizations. Leslie's doing good work. So we're actually utilizing our collective resources and our networks to inform the community. But we obviously need, as much support in lifting up this message as possible, because as was stated, we have 77,000 plus individuals who are now eligible to vote as a result of the passage of Assembly Bill 431.
We've, in our campaign, and I know a lot of other parts of the country have worked on this, when we're talking about fixing our democracy, we talk about automatic voter registration. And a lot of times we think about that high school senior from turning 18, being automatically registered, ready to go to the polls. Jageda, from what you just said, and Chairman, those 77,000 justice-involved Nevadans who are ready to vote, having some kind of automatic registration for them, and maybe having that federally mandated or assisted, if it's a matter of resources or a matter of rights, just like those who are awaiting trial, makes a lot of sense to me, and just to bring people in. Yeah.
I think that messaging will ignite that, Also, the fact that one of our mindsets going in, we were invested in the district attorney's race, to say the least here, but those voices that we were trying to get them, that's a confidence builder. That's your commitment to community. So we had a almost dual faceted. Yes, we wanted to get some votes that we knew would support the candidate that we wanted, or we felt that our current district attorney, people that are incarcerated, I'm sure they know that name, right? So we really wanted to galvanize a base of people that could probably end in the result of a more of a progressive district attorney's candidate. But there's some healing that has to go involved. We don't just want your vote. It's bigger than that with mass liberation. So the bridge from your exodus out, if you were to beat your case, your exodus out, we wanted to invite and have a space for these gentlemen. The same with our voter registration event that we're having on the 6th. This is an introduction. We want our formerly incarcerated folks to be a family. We don't just want your vote. We want you to have a vested interest. We want to take time to politically educate you. We want you to have a vested interest in this base, in your family. We want to firsthand hear what's the biggest thing for me. I'm going to go on my son's field trip. If I could have some, I've been on 20 years, I've been Gathering Community Pride over 20 years. It's embarrassing not being able to go on his field trips. You don't get it. Why? I know who I am. I know I'm a pillar in this community. I know what I'm doing, but those hindrances will still hamper you. So how can I ask you for your vote in custody and not be able to help you as family too? So that healing aspect, that wholesome, we want you to be a whole person. We don't want you to be a formerly incarcerated person that's voted. We want you to be a whole citizen in this community. And the onus of that, it falls on us. I like we have a team, forget about, I don't know if there's another state that has legislative representative in place that get it, with all due respect, that get it, that have a vested interest in our well-being. I think that's few and far between. So they're doing such a phenomenal job. there's a level of responsibility that falls on us. So the support that could come federally, it has to come from those who have been most affected. The been there, done that is powerful, especially when we're talking about formerly incarcerated folks.
And to piggyback off that, at the federal level, we're also going to need an increase in support to the states for mental health services. That is going to be instrumental to ensuring that we create a society and continue to build upon a society that recognize that folks need mental health support. And if we don't have a federal government that understands that, that is also willing to invest in the states to ensure that our citizens have the resources that they need to be productive members of society, then we're literally going to be spinning our wheels.
And it's all.
Please.
And it's also super important, if, since you're still in Congress, that what's happening around the census is appropriate. Everything was cut in half. And so how do you expect states to move the needle when the 12 regional agencies or established census groups were cut to 6, and that's regionally, and then the money was cut in half. And so we're literally moving in a space where you're requiring states to move and put in their own dollars, which Nevada has, but there has to be a concerted effort to try to make sure that all of these communities are counted, because if they're not counted, the services will not come through and the dollars will not filter through.
That's right.
And that's what is super, super important. And people keep acting like, well, February. No, it's now. You move communities now, not later.
Well said. And on this point of mental health care funding, perhaps we're all in agreement. I certainly want to pursue universal health care, high quality that includes mental health care as a matter of course and a matter of right for everyone. We found in Texas, and I wonder what it is in Nevada, our largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system in Texas. The largest inpatient provider is the Harris County Jail in Houston, in a state of 28 million people, and routinely hear stories from people who get arrested on purpose to get mental health care. It's the one place they know that they're guaranteed to get that care. I've met, there's a woman in Congress, Annie Custer from New Hampshire, who's working to ensure that mental health care dollars follow you when you're incarcerated, as do substance abuse programs. Much better chance that you're going to be healthy when you're out, you're going to be able to get a job, you're not going to go back into jail, your options are going to expand. In other words, not only is it morally the right thing to do, economically and fiscally, it is the most efficient use of our tax dollars to make sure that people are well enough to live to their full potential. So, point taken on federal support for states for mental health as part of this as well. And then on the census, making sure that that's fully funded. You said from $7 billion to $2 billion.
Yes.
On this, the census cut.
Yes.
So you're right, if we can't count everybody, then we're not going to have the resources to take care of everybody. So, well said.
And, I work in mental health in the community, and I have seen the cuts over the years. They offer all these services, but you have to put in a request for these services. So when you put in a request for these services, you're denied. So the insurance companies may be like, oh, we offer this, this, and this, but when it comes down to it, we're being denied for these services. And I believe there was a period for 2 months we didn't get paid as an agency. A lot of smaller agencies are just not well-financed agencies. They had to close because they didn't have the funding to support the clients. So it's definitely a need, and we shouldn't have to go to jail or prison to receive mental health.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think another layer of this is not being discussed is that when most states were hit with the recession, they used federal grants and federal allocations to fill their budget line items within their state budgets. So if we don't move the needle around federal funding, if we don't dial that in, you're going to, as president, face that same conversation about what do state budgets look like in a recession, because they no longer have those funds that were supplementing their state budgets. And I think that's a lost conversation in the national dialogue, because it's the truth. And it's been going on since 2011, and I think that ultimately when you think about big picture, when you think about we're solving common problems here, but the mechanisms to fix it are directly tied to dollars. And if you cannot deal constructively with the federal and state budget and its interagency, then you're going to be faced with a much larger problem when states start saying, well, it's because you cut me $5 million this year in my Medicaid dollars, or you cut me over here in my mental health services, and that was a state match. And that's a real conversation that I think needs to be had, period.
Agreed. And it's a matter both of stopping even more cuts, as you probably know. The president has proposed ending programs like community development block grants, which fund Meals on Wheels, which fund investment in affordable housing, which fund infrastructure. Counties proposed Medicaid and Medicare cuts that are really going to hurt states as well. So in addition to stopping that, being able to expand the investment, preparing for whatever future downturn we're going to see, and then investing in people and communities, which I think we all agree produces its own returns over the long run. Much better than tax cuts to the very wealthiest or the corporations who are sitting on record piles of cash. So I think, again, you're right on point. It's twofold: stopping the bad stuff, but then really making those investments going forward. And we need to do that at the federal level. Cannot expect the states to carry, as much as you all are doing right now, to carry that full weight.
So, with Nevada being, the first in the West Caucasus, say third state in the country to, go through the caucus process, you can see that our issues are diverse. We have a lot going on here in the state, and this is the first true test for many candidates because of our diversity. So when we are speaking to issues like criminal justice reform, or looking at issues like how do we, fix our immigration system that is broken, and how do we address the ongoing attack that is coming from this administration, this attack on poor people. Like, how do we continue to lift up the voices of the people who are on the ground so desperately waiting for government to work for them? So these are just a few issues that we have, but we want to continue this discussion. And we're looking forward to all candidates speaking to the issues that Nevada faces.
Absolutely, I could not agree with you more. And I think the only way to do that is to show up and listen and learn from those whom you hope to serve and reflect their stories and their experiences. And as I've heard from everybody who's spoken up today, their solutions, very specific proposals about how to expand access to the franchise, very specific solutions that you have already delivered on that can be adopted nationally that ensure that more people are able to fully participate in the success of this country, or have their rights respected, or can reintegrate in a meaningful way, and that it not be a function of your wealth or your privilege, but is something that is fundamental to your rights as an American. So even from what I've heard in this brief conversation, very inspired, some very specific requests that you've made of me that I want to follow up on and want to implement because they make perfect sense. And then I want to make sure to your charge that we travel everywhere in Nevada to listen to everybody and bring them into the conversation, again, without regard to party affiliation, the ability to vote right now, whether or not you've been justice involved, just that you're here. And that I have a chance to be with you and listen to you. That's what matters at this moment, and that's what we're going to stay focused on. I don't know, Cynthia, on our time.
We have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I want to make sure we
So before we go, I know Pastor and First Lady wanted to say something, and then we can go to Mr. Allen.
Perfect.
Yes. I just want to say something briefly. I grew up in Las Vegas. I'm a combat veteran, United States Army. I did 10 years in the United States Army. And when I came home, I was very alarmed about the issues that are in our community. Like I said, I've been a pastor for the last 8 years, and the problem that I'm having, I know this. Thank you for first recognizing the systemic issues, because it's bigger than us, so to speak. This goes back from, I always say, how you start a thing is how you finish it. And we're trying to figure out, how do you change a country that was built on all the hate, the killing, Now, how do we stop something that we started, right? And so I understand the complex situation, but the problem from a pastoral level is that I deal with people who've been incarcerated, people who've had felonies. They come in and they say, I'm not that person anymore. I made a mistake at 20 years old. I'm now 30. I think everyone in this room can say that our maturity grows as we get older.
Absolutely.
Things you did at 19, you're not going to do at 40. If you do, then we have some immature issues, right? But for most people, they learn from the mistakes that they make. The first thing I want to talk about is, I'm very interested in the tag of the word felon. Because what I can't figure out, and I'm just giving you from a just straight perspective, is we're in a country that does not believe in double jeopardy, from my understanding, which means you can't be charged twice for the same offense. If that's the case, if someone does 10 years in a prison, why when they leave the prison, they have to be tagged as a felon? What was the 10 years for? And that's the thing I don't think people understand. Do you know what it's like to be in a prison
Right.
for 10 years of your life? When you leave there, why is that tag still follow you everywhere you go? So did I pay my debt or not?
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, now that I have this tag, I'm still in prison. I'm just free. Because now I can't do this, and I have to tell you my mistakes. If we all had to walk around telling each other the worst stuff we've ever done, how many people would really be free? We'd all be locked up in some point, whether it was a thought or an action. So I think the propaganda of prison really annoys me, because when I was in the United States Army and I was in foreign countries, everyone was labeled. And it didn't matter if you were in the war or not. The fact you were there, you were a part of it. And I think we have to start breaking those barriers down. Every black kid is not a criminal. Only the one who committed the crime. You know what I mean? It's like everything is so, we just go around and we tag everyone. Once you do your time, you should be free. Now, I don't know the politics, because I believe certain crimes people need to know. They're hiring somebody who ate people or something, you know, something extreme like that. I would want to know. But I don't know how to get that stigma off. Maybe certain classes, they don't have the stigma. But I have tons of family that has been to prison, unfortunately, for the pettiest things. That I see other people walk away, and when they get out, the problem I have is all these felons that come to church, they've changed their lives, they started families, but they're still tagged. And so I go and Senator will tell you, McCurdy, I have so many community events that we do to help the community, but I can't help getting a job when people won't hire you. I can't help you get an apartment when they say you need 3 times the rent. And matter of fact, we're gonna do a background check, and so by the time you get the key, we'll be taking it back because you're not gonna pass. I have a young man in our church who, he has a felony, and we finally got him a job at 7-Eleven. This man has gotten married in our church, has children. Not only that, is now a store manager of 7-Eleven. But that's as far as he can go. And it's irritating because he has all the ability, but he has that tag. And if you're a black person in America, and I'm sorry because I didn't mean to go there, we were born with one. You get a felon, now you have 2 tags. Some of us can't afford more tags. Hispanics, you know, those of color, we can't afford any more tags. So my thing is, if the prison system is designed to make you pay for the mistakes you made, once you made them, leave me alone. I did it. I did my part. It's like when you get on restriction. A restriction for today, you can't play the game. After that, we don't walk around saying, you were on restriction. You were on restriction. It's over. It has to come to a point where it's over, so that these people can move on with their lives and they can be productive citizens in America. The problem is, it's the troublemakers that get the screams. The people who do well, they get the whispers. And I think we need to start really lifting up the people who actually got out of prison and made themselves something, versus highlighting the people who got out of prison and failed. Some people are gonna fail no matter what, that's just life. But we gotta erase the tags. The only way these people are gonna have opportunity to do anything. So I wish if I could say something that I would want to happen, help me help them. the state legislation, they're not going to get on the ground. They're not going to go in the city of North Las Vegas in a rough neighborhood where this guy has a felony and he's in the crib with his baby mama. I'm talking about the real drama of what real life looks like. They're not going to go there. But we will. Empower me to empower them. I'm on the ground. But so many institutions have mismanaged funds. I get all that. But there are people who are really trying to help people make it. And so some type of way, funneling out the people who are not, give me, I'll speak for myself, an opportunity to help these people that are at my church who are walking away, not because they can't do it, because no one gives them a chance. And so that's pretty much my spiel.
That's great.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have Mr. Allen and Will.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening today. As a man, I'll be 60 years old in November. And in 30 years, I did 28 flat, and I went back on a 2-year violation for gambling. I wasn't supposed to be gambling. So I bit that bullet, I went back. And I came home in 2008 after 28 flat years. And what I was so in a hurry to get out, I couldn't believe that the system is going to frown, are going to smile on me, a guy like me. And I admit, every day I'm remorseful for taking a person's life. Death row was an experience. I kind of lost reality sitting on death row because my cell didn't have a window. I couldn't look out. So every day I would ask the officers, is it raining out? Is it cloudy? Is it nice outside? Because sometimes I would lose my yard privileges. So, but sitting in that and wrapped around that, I had teachers from Carson City, Nevada, come up to CMU, condemned man unit. And they said, Mr. Allen, you're 19, but if you want to further your education, even though you're sitting on a bad spot, but if you want your GED, your high school diploma, and I accepted that while sitting on death row as a young man. They would bring the curriculum in, I would do it, I would do the homework, pass it on. My worst subject was math, and it should have been my best subject. I was standing on these streets selling dope and being in the curricular activity I was in. But I wanted to say this. When I was given a chance at life, parole, all of the years came back and it hit me. And one of the I met two inspirational people while I was incarcerated. One was Miss Neal's dad. He came to the prison. And one was your dad. They came to the prison. And I know, and I can, Pastor, I can say, these two hits the ground. He hits the ground. I've seen you in Sherman Gardens many times after shooting, after a gang rival, whatever. And I appreciate that because I'm from that area. I was allowed, when I came home, to work for the Las Vegas Urban League, and they made me a mentor. And to bring home a check of $1,000 every 2 weeks felt good. It felt good to go buy a car, to get an apartment, to have a job. And they gave me that opportunity. Other dignitaries, they knew about my story, so they got involved. Everybody can't be a James Allen. People got behind me. I just want to say I was lucky to go on a trip to Washington, D.C. The Urban League sponsored me as one of the mentors, and Attorney General Eric Holder, I met him in Washington, D.C., Harry Reid. But the people that had on the blue coats and the red coats, ex-felons. They're sitting there talking to me, I'm going, you working in the Capitol? But in my state, they're not going to hire an ex-felon. I'm not going to be in Carson City standing on the floor of the legislation and, trying to help get bills passed through, my experiences. But I just want to say that being out here today and working and functioning, I work at the Mob Museum. And I'm one of the, probably the best dressed men at the Mob Museum. I get that all the time from the tourists because I work down in the underground, in the lounge. And my bosses, they told me, they said, you did all this time in prison, Alan, and you don't have tattoos, you look like us, you know, you talk like us, you know, and it's like, yeah, us, you know, us, you know, people that haven't been incarcerated, and people that haven't been through the justice system, but it's just been overwhelming, you know, because out here you hear the politics, and, you know, being an inmate incarcerated, you're watching the news, and believe me, inmates follow politics. They follow who's getting elected because they want to know your views. You know, are you going to keep me in prison, or are you going to help me get out? Are you going to help me function? Like when I came home, I couldn't go back to the Sherman Garden. Housing Authority said no. You was convicted of a felony. You can't go to house. You can't live over there. You know, and they tell so many ex-offenders that. So if you sold drugs, if it was violence, you know, even a domestic now, you know, you can't go back to the community that you left from. And there's so much that needs to be done, so much that needs to be said. And I attend these meetings. I'm glad I came here today. I'm glad I met you, sir. Hopefully you be the next president. I like your views.
We want to thank you for your time. We want to thank you for this opportunity to listen. And we look forward to hearing you lift up some of these issues, you know, as you navigate the campaign trail. And thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you each for the time, for sharing your stories.